So you have probably heard the saying that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, but in a figurative sense, Modesto, California is a place where lightning did strike twice, in the sense that there was two high-profile cases of missing women many years ago, at least 20 years ago. Both women ended up tragically murdered. The first case involved a missing intern from Modesto, California named Shandra Levy that basically sank the career of a U.S. congressman. A short time later, a young, pretty 27-year-old Modesto girl who was pregnant disappeared Christmas Eve, and ultimately her husband was charged with her murder. Hi, welcome to this episode of History Hunters. I'm here at the Burwood Cemetery in Escalon, California, and I'm certainly not the first YouTuber to come out here, but I'm going to show you the grave of Laci Peterson and Connor Peterson, the unborn child that was murdered by Dad. I'm also going to take you to Lakewood Cemetery. For the first time ever, we're going to show you the marker marking the grave of Shandra Levy. This is really a beautiful and peaceful cemetery, other than the morning traffic. The morning commute is on, and there's a lot of traffic going down River Road. Beautiful spot, and wanted to highlight Laci Peterson and her life story. She was born in 1975. She died on December 24th, 2002. She was in the news quite a bit. She was murdered with her unborn child, Connor, and her husband, Scott Peterson, was charged with murder, and he's still appealing that. And the grave is right here. Laci Denise Rocha. Now, the reason that Peterson wasn't put on the grave is because their parents obviously didn't want any mention of the name Peterson. It says our brown-eyed girl, Denise Rocha, May 4th, 1975 to December 24th, 2002. And then there's the grave of Connor, our precious baby Connor. Your beautiful smile, contagious laughter, laughing heart, and free spirit will forever be with us. We love you so much and hold you close within our hearts until we are together again. Our angels in heaven. And there's a bunch of Christmas decorations out here. Christmas tree, poinsettia, little toys. Very tragic. Now, sadly, not all of the remains of Laci are here in this grave. Don't want to get too graphic. They've never found various parts of her body. She was found, of course, in the San Francisco Bay, where Scott Peterson had said he had been fishing that day. It's believed that he had made some concrete anchors to anchor down the body. However, with the decomposition, her body ended up floating to the surface and then washing up on the shore there on the East Bay. In November 2004, Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder of Laci Peterson and second-degree murder of their infant son. Now, Laci grew up in Stanislaus County and San Joaquin County, and she worked on a dairy farm west of here. At a young age, her parents divorced, and Laci and her brother, Sharon the mom, and children moved to Modesto, and she eventually married Ron Gratzky, who helped raise Laci and Brent from the time that Laci was 2 years old. Laci was a cheerleader in junior high school and high school, and after graduating from Downey High School, she attended Cal Poly State University in San Luis Obispo, majoring in ornamental horticulture. In 1994, Scott and Laci Peterson met in Morro Bay, where he was working at the Pacific Cafe while attending school there. They began dating, and Scott put aside his dreams of being a professional golfer to the side to focus on a business career. They moved in together after 2 years of dating. After she graduated from Cal Poly in 1997, they were married, and Scott finished his senior year, and Laci took a job in nearby Prunedale. It's believed that Scott was unfaithful to Laci at that time. Scott then graduated in June of 1998, and then they opened a sports bar in San Luis Obispo called The Shack, but then they sold it and moved to Modesto to start a family where tragedy would take place in their lives. Unnecessary tragedy. In October 2000, the Petersons purchased a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on Covina Avenue for $177,000. Laci took a part-time job as a substitute teacher, and Scott took a job with a fertilizer company. Laci found out that she was pregnant in 2002, and she had a due date of February 10th, 2003. She was excited about being a mother. She loved being a homemaker. She loved watching Martha Stewart, loved to cook, and she was preparing for the beautiful child that was going to be coming into their lives. Unfortunately, Scott Peterson was fooling around quite a bit. I understand he had numerous affairs, and he met this woman named Amber Fry. And after the, well, let me tell you about that. Scott Peterson was telling her that first he wasn't married, and then he said he was a widower, and this would be a first Christmas without her. This was in November. Keep in mind, he hadn't killed Laci yet, and so he was already planting in her mind that the wife had died. Well, Amber Fry heard about this report on the news about the Laci Peterson disappearance. Everybody knew about it at the time, so he was actually calling her from the memorial service. They had a vigil for Laci, and Scott was calling his lover down in Fresno at that time. And so finally, Amber Fry had enough of this, and she came to the Modesto police.
I met Scott Peterson November 20th, 2002. I was introduced to him. I was told he was unmarried.
You came to me after Sean had found out that you were married, and you came and told me this elaborate lie about her missing and this tragedy, and that
No.
and that this will be the first holidays without her.
I never said. Amber.
Yes.
God, I don't want to fight with you. You know that I never said tragedy or missing.
Oh yes, you said you've lost your wife.
No.
You said
Yes.
Obviously, without me saying much, but we will.
I said that I lost my wife.
Yes, you did.
I did, and yes.
How did you lose her then, before she was lost? Explain that.
There are different kinds of loss, Amber.
Then explain your loss.
I can't to you now.
When can you?
I can
When
once
my name
there's...
has been smeared all over tabloids and everything else because I'm the lover, I'm the girlfriend. When you've been married to this woman?
You don't deserve that.
No, I don't deserve this.
And from that point on, everybody thought sweet old Scott Peterson was an innocent guy up to that point, and he got his.
Jurors must decide more than Scott Peterson's innocence or guilt. They may also determine whether he deserves the death penalty.
He was actually sentenced to death, and that death penalty, of course, nobody dies in California because of our governor, and so now he's behind bars for life. He's trying to appeal his case, saying it was all circumstantial evidence. So a little bit of trivia that nobody else probably has reported on or knows about is if you come back this way, we have this woman here. Her name was Mary Jean Presnell Montgomery, 1924 to 1999. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother. Married to Eugene Montgomery. Well, turns out that Mary Presnell is the aunt of movie star Harve Presnell.
Rain is Tess, the fire's Joe, and they call the wind Mariah.
Harve Presnell is a Modesto native, and he's very famous around here. His whole family lived in the North Modesto area off of Ladd Road. Who was in the musical Annie, and it was also in the famous Saving Private Ryan film with Tom Hanks. A little bit of trivia that probably nobody has told you about on YouTube. I think if you're like me, you probably have been really troubled by this story. I mean, you've got a good-looking guy married to a beautiful wife. By all indications, she was just a sweet young girl. She was 27 years old, and they were looking forward to their first child. I mean, why? Why are you out fooling around? And then to have the most sinister idea to kill your wife and your baby so you wouldn't have to pay child support, so you could go mess around with somebody else. I don't get it. Like, what the hell? So I think what I'm going to do now is take you over to Covina Avenue in Modesto, show you the house where Scott and Laci Peterson lived, likely the place where he snuffed out her life. Police believe that he suffocated her, taking her life and that of their unborn baby. So this is the house up here, the greenhouse. That's the Peterson house, one that they lived in, and likely where Laci was murdered before Christmas of 2002. So at one time, this was probably the most talked about house in the country because of the tremendous media frenzy that was occurring over the case. Scott claimed that he left this house on the morning of December 24th to go fishing at the Berkeley Marina on the San Francisco Bay, but Modesto police believe that he killed her here and that the fishing trip was merely a cover while he dumped her body in the bay. He used concrete anchors to keep her from floating. Now, when he left here, he claimed that Laci was watching a Martha Stewart show about meringue and said she was preparing to mop the floor, bake cookies, and walk the family dog to a nearby park. Now, the prosecution said part of his cover for the crime would be to make it appear that Laci was kidnapped while walking the dog, so he had to free it from the yard, and neighbors found the Peterson's golden retriever, Mackenzie, out in front. So when Peterson gets done dumping the body, he returns home and he puts on this act asking neighbors if they'd seen Laci. And probably as a ruse to throw off the detectives, he called Laci's cell phone and left a message that said, "Hey, beautiful, it's 2:15, I'm leaving Berkeley." He then called his mother-in-law, Sharon, to ask if Laci was with her, and that's when they decided to report her as missing at about 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Now, detectives were pretty suspicious of Peterson from the start, saying that he seemed arrogant, distant, irritable, and a guy that didn't seem like he was too disturbed by his wife's disappearance. Now, there was absolutely no evidence in this house that Laci was killed. Now, the driveway was a focus for the murder trial because of the concrete anchors that Scott made in his warehouse. Prosecutors believe that he used cement to make 5 anchors, one of which they found in the boat. The others, they suspect, were used to keep his wife's body down in the water in the bay, but they've never been recovered. But Peterson claimed that he made only 1 anchor and used the rest of the 90-pound bag of cement to repair this driveway. But a witness testified in court that the concrete samples taken by police from his driveway did not match the concrete in the anchor discovered on the boat. And of course, when the bodies washed ashore in April of 2003, Scott Peterson was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder.
You're pleading not guilty to 2 charges of murder?
That's correct, Your Honor. I'm innocent.
Did you murder your wife?
No. Violence towards women is unapproachable. It is the most disgusting act to me.
Did your wife find out about it?
I told my wife.
When?
In early December.
Did it cause a rupture in the marriage?
It wasn't anything that would break us apart.
There wasn't a lot of anger?
No.
Do you really expect people to believe that an 8.5-month pregnant woman learns her husband has had an affair and is saintly and accommodating, makes a peace with it?
Yeah, you don't know. No one knows our relationship but us.
Her husband, Scott, has been all but tried and convicted by many.
Nobody I've run into believes any part of your story.
She and I were in the kitchen preparing dinner when she told me that she's going to stop taking birth control pills in December. Well, that surprised me because it had only been a month ago that Scott didn't want to have children. So we had a conversation about that, and I said, "Are you sure? Are both of you absolutely sure? Because you can't put the baby back once he's here." And she said yes, that they had talked about it and they were ready, that Scott was ready also.
So I've come over here to a different cemetery, and if you look over here by the Stanislaus County Peace Officers Association Memorial, off to the left you will see the grave of James Brazelton, who was the district attorney who prosecuted the Scott Peterson case. started over in Stanislaus County, and it moved over to Redwood City because most of the people around here thought Scott Peterson was guilty, so they thought that he couldn't get a fair trial here in this county. But it turns out that the Redwood City jury as well considered him guilty as sin, and the marker for Brazelton is here. It says, Braz fought hard and strong for all victims of violent crimes. He was the voice of those silenced forever. And over on the front side, you see that there's a picture on his grave. James Clare Brazelton, 1941 to 2007. Patriot, steadfast, loving husband and father, loyal friend. I will always love you. So I actually knew Jim Brazelton. There were many times I would come out here to the Peace Officers Memorial, being a local reporter here in Stanislaus County. He would come around election time wanting some ink. As you know how politicians are, they want their campaign message out there. So he was a politician. District attorneys are elected by the people. I am now in Lakewood Memorial Park. It's a massive cemetery outside of Modesto. It's closer to Houston, California, but it's one of the largest cemeteries in Stanislaus County. A couple years ago, I came out here. If you remember, I did a video on the graves of actor Dean Jagger and the woman who is known as the migrant mother, and stopped by here to see if I could find the grave of Shandra Levy. Now, at that time, there was no marker that I'm aware of. I checked online, found out that there is now a marker for her. It's not very hard to find. You just look for this Jewish symbol up here, and we're in the Jewish portion of the cemetery that's devoted to the Jewish people. And her grave is right here. Chandra and Levy, April 14th, 1977. She was born actually in Cleveland, Ohio. She was the daughter of a doctor here in Modesto, Dr. Robert Levy, and his wife Susan. She grew up in Modesto, however. She attended San Francisco State University, obtaining a degree in journalism, and then began attending the University of Southern California to earn her master's degree in public administration. As part of her studies, she moved to Washington, D.C., where she interned with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. When she completed her degree requirements and her internship ended, she prepared to return to California. While in D.C., she became friends with Congressman Gary Condit, who represented Modesto in Congress. So I apologize for the noise, but this grave is pretty close to the Santa Fe Avenue over here. It's a busy road. There's a train track, so there could be a train coming through here. But I want to talk about the fact that Chandra Levy was last seen April 30th of 2001. The next day was May 1st. She decided to go jogging. She was living in the area of Rock Creek Park there in the suburb of D.C. She actually had Googled online how to find this mansion where a lot of joggers would go jogging. It's a historic mansion. Her parents reported her missing when she didn't show up in California. The local newspaper was tipped off that Chandra was having a relationship with Congressman Gary Condit. And once the story broke, all hell broke loose. It was a media frenzy like never before seen in Stanislaus County. It was the biggest news story of 2001 until September 11 terrorist attacks took place, which completely preempted that whole media frenzy. It was never proven that Gary Condit had anything to do with the disappearance of this young lady. But it had to be the dumbest luck of any politician alive to be messing around with a young intern from your district who turns up missing. Because obviously it's going to come back to you. They're going to find out you had something going on with her and you were going to be a person of interest. But it completely destroyed his credibility in his district. For somebody who was always a people person and always accessible to his constituents, he became elusive. He became combative sometimes with the press. At one time he was swatting at a photographer, and that picture just kind of went crazy. Now, public opinion kind of basically said Gary Condit's not the person that we thought he was. Destroyed his reputation. The following March 2002, there was a primary election for Congress. He was running for re-election. He lost the election to his underling, Dennis Cardozo, and approximately 2 months later, Chandra Levy's body turns up in the park. Now, they had searched Rock Creek Park a number of times with dogs. They never did find any evidence of Shandra Levy. Then one day, somebody found the skeletal remains of Shandra Levy. So it's right here in this grave, the remains that were found in Rock Creek Park. You know, for such a huge story, I'm wondering 100 years from now, people will walk through here, will they even know the name of Shandra Levy? Now, her murderer has never been identified. Police pretty much ruled out conduct, as I explained, but in March 2009, police had arrested an illegal alien from El Salvador named Ingmar Gundaki and charged him with the murder. He had been convicted of assaulting 2 other women in Rock Creek Park. In 2015, he was convicted of Levy's murder and sentenced to 60 years in prison, but the case was overturned, questioning the credibility of a jailhouse witness. So really, somebody got away with murder so far. Hopefully someday we'll find out who did this to this young lady, stumped out her life. It's just tremendously sad. I do want to thank you for helping us honor the memory of these 2 young ladies from Modesto, California. They died very close together, died in some ways that no young woman should die. When I think of Laci Peterson, you know, we need to think about impact of our decisions. Think of Scott Peterson. I'm sure when he decided to mess around on his wife, he probably had no idea that it would end up the way it did. Would you please give us a comment, and would you please give us a thumbs up? We always appreciate you participating in the audience of History Hunters. Thank you so much.